Hi, and we're back. Suzanne, I would love to know more about buying a business.
Okay.
Where do you start?
Well, that's a very big question. When you want to consider purchasing a practice, my first thought is, wait a minute, take 2 steps back and ask yourself, why do I want to buy a practice? And the reason why I say that is because I have people asking me very often, I want to buy a practice. I had a call from somebody 2 days ago who called me up, I had found your information online, and I want to buy a practice. And this person had only been in business for less than 2 years and did not have much money under management yet. So I asked, great that you'd like to buy a business, but tell me why. And one of the things that is most often said is, I want to buy a practice because that's a good way for me to grow. And that is true, but if that is your reason, then you also have to look at how am I best positioned to be able to buy a practice. So if you are looking at what's going to make a seller find my business more attractive, then you have to look at how is my business going to look on paper. My business may only be up and running for 5 years or less. So that is not going to be as much of an appeal to someone who's been in business for 10 years or longer, because your client relationships, everything isn't quite as solid as what a business that's been out there longer. So you want to think about, are you in a good place for the seller to see your business as being an attractive company to purchase. Also, you want to think about, how can I understand if this is a good business for me or not? So if you're looking to buy a practice, what are the types of ways that you invest? You want to align yourself with a company that's selling that has similar ways of investing. Do they invest in similar investments, or do they have investments that you would want to actually use to help to grow their clients? What do you know about how can your clients align with the new clients coming in? Are you able to even bring on 100 clients or 200 clients? These are all very logistical things to take into consideration, because if you are just handling your clients just fine now and then you want to acquire another 100, 200 clients, you have to be able to service those clients and continue to service your own clients. So you want to make sure you're not going to bite off more than you can chew. And the other thing that I would suggest with looking to buy a practice is your technology in place? Are you able to track your own clients and then take in another 100, 200 clients who may have 400 or 500 accounts? Because many times clients have multiple accounts. They have their children's accounts, they have retirement accounts, they've got business accounts. So you have to be able to integrate quickly a lot of new client data and information, and to be able to stay on top of it. So your technology really has to be scalable. I have clients who typically, after about 10 to 15 years, continuously update their CRMs, because they know that the information that they had previously is just not as viable for them in today's environment. They want CRM information, the customer's name, address, all of their notes for activities. They want that information to actually integrate with other software that they have. It could be their billing software. It could be their financial planning software. It could be other research software. And that way, their information for the client can populate with the latest version of a financial plan so that all of that can be done together, not separate. So if you're looking at buying a practice, you want to make sure that your technology can help you to be able to manage another 200-300 more clients potentially, and all of the data that's going to go along with that. So you want to keep your efficiency high. Are you efficient right now? Is your business running well? Are the things that you need to do to help your business to be able to be more efficient before you look at buying a practice? Those are things you want to do first, not after you go and start working on putting a deal together and then you realize, oh, I need to put all these things together, or my billing isn't going to be able to handle it as quickly. So there are logistics that you want to have in place before you go to buy a practice. Once you make that decision, then it becomes, okay, I'm ready for buying a practice. Now, what should I do next? That's when you can start to talk to other advisors, attend advisor meetings, join advisor groups, and get yourself immersed in what type of advisors are looking to sell their practice. There's at least a half a dozen websites that are listings, provide listings for advisors who are selling their practices that are in certain areas. You certainly can register with firms like FP Transitions and Succession Link. They have fees to help you to get in with access to looking at their databases and their pools. And you can just at least have a good idea of here's how you list a practice when you're looking to be a buyer, and here are specific selling opportunities so that you can see both sides, the buy side and the sell side, and get yourself familiar with what is the marketplace bearing right now and how much activity is there. Are there more buyers than sellers? Right now there's a significant amount of buyers in comparison to sellers, so it's a seller's market right now. But this at least will help you to learn about what is involved in the process if you're considering to buying a practice.
What does it cost someone who wanted to do that, to log on and see and compare?
It depends on the company that is providing the service. So sometimes it's $100 a month. It could be sometimes free just to have access to a list, but if you want more information, then there's fees that go along with it. So it really just depends on the company that's offering the listing services.
And what kind of information about client demographics, and are they in accumulation or decumulation, or what are they doing as far as sharing that information so you know what you're buying?
So if you are at the phase where you can have more access to the seller information, you pretty much want to have some kind of overview or profile of the practice. It will tell you how many assets there are. It will tell you how much revenue the practice generates. It will tell you what information by demographics on the clients that there is. Usually it'll group together. There's 50% of the clients are between the ages of 50 and 60. Another 30% are between 60 and 70, and the rest are above 80 or below 40. So you'll have sort of a snapshot on what types of client ages there are. which will also give you an idea. Well, if there's 50% of the clients between 50 and 60, then those are either considered pre-retirement age groups, or there could be some that are just about ready to retire, and that will give you a sense of, well, what types of investments or what types of advice or what types of planning services would be needed if that was a book of business that you were going to approach. You can also usually find out about what types of niches there might be as well. So it could be that age group, but they are all doctors, or they are all pharmacists, or whatever their niche is.
What are some of the red flags that you might see when you're looking to buy a business?
Well, for one, you want to look for companies that have investments in areas that are more liquid than illiquid. So if you're helping clients who are invested in different instruments, such as mutual funds, or they're in different kinds of investment management portfolios, third-party portfolios, then those are investments that if things change, you can move them around, you can reallocate them according to what you feel are more appropriate, because your style may be different from what the previous seller's style was. If you have more assets that are in investments that are illiquid, say for example REITs, those investments can be tied up for 7-8 years, and you may only be in year 2. So you're not going to be able to help the client with any of those investments at all for another 5 years plus. So that money is basically money you cannot touch. So if there's a large concentration of their portfolios that the seller has that are in REITs, then you're not going to really benefit from helping the clients with other ways of helping them with their finances for many years, which is actually going to impact the value of that practice. It's going to drop it quite a bit if that's the majority of what is in the client portfolios. So you have to look out for, are the client investments in something that is suitable for you to being able to help the clients as well.
What are some of the tax and legal implications involved in buying a practice?
Usually you have at least 2 or 3 types of legal agreements that are going to be involved with the process. You know, you're going to have some formal letter of intent, which is to start the process, to let the seller know, I am interested in purchasing your practice. This is a firm, solid offer, and that helps them to feel engaged in the process, that you can begin to negotiate your terms. That's typically revised once or twice or maybe more, and that's when the next phase of it begins, where you have your actual purchase agreement, and that's where the terms of your deal are put in place. You can also have employment agreements if the seller wants to stay on for a certain time period. It doesn't want to just sell and be gone. Sometimes you can offer them compensation. That's a separate contract from your purchase agreement. And all of these are needing advice with legal counsel from start to finish. So on the tax side, there's typically questions about, how will this impact how will the purchase impact taxable consequences. So if there's a down payment. It could be like a house. You get a down payment, you have installment payments for 5 years or 3 years or 7 years, whatever your terms are. Every time you're writing checks, there's a taxable consequences. That's usually discussed before the actual terms are finalized. You also want to make sure that you factor in other costs or expenses. If the seller has an office and you're taking over their lease or you're taking over equipment, how is that going to impact your taxable situation? So you're always going to need to have a good, solid team of legal experts and tax experts to help along the way.
What about financing? Is this something that you can finance, and where do you find that kind of a loan?
So financing is certainly done a couple of ways. You can typically look at working with a bank that specializes in financing for businesses, SBA loans, and then there are some lenders who actually work specifically with the financial services industry as well, like Live Oak Bank, that understands the revenue comes in quarterly, how that impacts the cash flow, and they understand some firms bill in the rears, some bill up front. So these are all things that sometimes a traditional lender doesn't understand this side of the business. So you can look for someone who specializes in financial services industry. And depending on the firm that you're at, if you're at a broker-dealer firm, they also often help with financing internally, and they'll get very favorable interest rates, and they will also sometimes do bridge loans to help with bringing money in for the down payment to help the seller to have a good down payment as well. So depending on if you're at a broker-dealer that offers that, that's absolutely worth inquiring about.
Do you ever see these fall through, and what are some of the challenges?
Yes, falling through is something that happens regularly, unfortunately. The reality is that selling and purchasing practices is an emotionally charged situation. Sellers have ideas of what they would like to see happen. Buyers may or may not agree to what all the terms are that the sellers are looking for. So in some instances, things do not go all the way through because it's an agreeable situation. I always remind people, if you want this to happen, it's got to be a win-win situation. So yes, sometimes you have sellers who will only have a certain price, and they're not willing to drop the price, and they are not flexible on payment. Maybe they want a lot of money up front. A standard down payment is usually somewhere between 20 to 30% down, but some people want 50% down. Well, that's a lot of money. And sometimes sellers say, that's what I want. So even if we like each other and we agree that our businesses could work together, either they want their 50% down or they're out. I've seen deals blow up days before they were supposed to close. It's a lot of emotionally charged type of thinking. So even though it looks like the deal can work its way out, you've got to make sure your contract language is in agreement. Sometimes the lawyers are going to encourage you to stand by what their advice is. Do not give in. The other side has to give in, and the other side's attorney is saying the same thing. So how do you come to a meeting of the minds? Sometimes deals blow up. So you have to be in a position where you want as much as possible to make it a win-win situation.
Any final tips for someone who's considering buying a financial services practice?
For someone who wants to buy a financial service practice, I would just say that it's not an easy process. You need to think very carefully if this is something that you really want to do. And if you do decide that you want to find a practice and purchase it, make it a win-win situation.
Suzanne, thank you very much for your time. This has been Suzanne Patrick Lawrence, Advisor Business Solutions, and we appreciate your expertise. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you very much, Linda. It's been a pleasure.